Hello guys, it's Oleksandr from Starting Games, and today I will be answering community questions in our dev Q&A dedicated to the Ukraine war stories. So we've gathered questions from the community over the last couple of weeks, and here they come. So the first question. Which audiences or audience do you make the game for? For you and your friends, for the Ukrainian audience, or for the Western audience, or someone else? Well, so basically, our initial idea was to spread the information about what's going on in Ukraine worldwide. So first of all, it's like worldwide audience. We do not target like specific countries or nations. We want people who are interested in these events across the entire world to know what's happening. But also, of course, we consider the Ukrainian audience as well, because we know that people would be interested to look at this project and compare their own experience with what we show and describe in Ukraine war stories. And we've already seen several YouTubers from Ukraine who've played it on live stream, and some even cried. So they were really impressed and left us with positive feedback and said that it was sometimes really close to what they themselves have experienced or know, and it was really a very touching moment for them and for us, seeing their reaction and their emotions. So I guess it doesn't have a very specific audience. I would say that it has a goal to reach a worldwide audience, but of course it's both for people abroad and for people of Ukraine who would want to see the project. Again, I've heard from some people in Ukraine that the experience of the war so far was so traumatizing for them that they don't really want to play the game. I mean, they support the overall the project, but they don't really want to play it themselves, not now at least, as it's still too fresh in their memory. So I think that that's totally okay. I mean, people can play it when they want or not play it if they feel that would be bad for them. So I think that it's great that people support this idea overall, and if someone doesn't want to see it right now, maybe they would want to do that in 10 years or something. So everything changes, and then again there are different people with different experiences, so yeah, it's very individual. But yeah, and I can understand people who are worried, not only in Ukraine, that it would be too traumatizing. So yeah, that's a valid concern, although we've tried to make it not overly horrifying and repulsing, so that you can keep reading and you don't want to drop it. But at the same time, we didn't want to belittle the horrors of what the Russian army did in Ukraine, so it's sort of had to walk between those two extremes, and I think we've managed so far. So but that's for the audience to decide. Next question. The game is also a collection of sources. How did you collect the sources? Well, first of all, we are living in Kiev, and two stories, Hostomel and Bucha, they are basically outskirts of Kiev. happening in the outskirts, and Mariupol, of course, it's in the other part of the country, but still, you know, everyone have friends, relatives, people they know, so it's quite easy to verify like the overall course of events. Then we start searching the web, you know, looking, and we know where to look basically, because we follow the war very closely as the Russian army stopped like 3 kilometers from Kiev. So, and you know, we are used to filtering the information, so because we did like historical games before, we have developed like skills for avoiding like fake information or dubious sources. So we always look for the most valid sources of information. Actually, we had to drop a lot of sources because we doubted their integrity. There was a whole scandal in Ukraine when one of the government officials provided some dubious information that was later unconfirmed, and after that we've carefully when we've started making those sources and checkups, it was already in the air, so we've double checked and dropped all sources in any way connected to that event. So basically we've dropped a number of sources that wasn't supported by hard evidence, and we didn't, you know, use any speculative sources, so to say, or any like people trying to make some propaganda or something. We've carefully studied each source and choose only those that we were 100% sure would be valid, because we don't want, you know, all this work to go to waste, because it would be later found out that we've used some wrong sources or something, or some speculations. So it's a careful search on the web, and we've compared it with all the information we already knew. Plus, we've interviewed some real eyewitnesses, basically, and also compared all the other sources and all the data with their eyewitness accounts. So it's a complex process, but I can say that we are pretty confident in our information and the way we present it. Next question. Do you collect the sources as possible evidence in a war crimes tribunal? Well, we are not necessarily collecting that much sources, because most of what we use is public information, and they were already collected by some other people. So like we are not some private investigators gathering like extra evidence. There are like thousands of people, I think, who are you know, working right now on documenting all the crimes that are committed by the invading forces, and you know, they don't need our help basically right now. What we could do is we could spread this valid information worldwide, and we could preserve it for later. Of course, it would be preserved in some, you know, I don't know, police archives or something, but here like everyone could find it easily and could see the key information, you know, without delving very deep into some official sources. So I don't think our project can help in any way to serve as evidence during war crime tribunals. I think there is enough evidence without our project. Our project is more like spreading this information to the general public, making it, bringing more publicity to it, rather than gathering some new information. Next question. The game will serve as a historic document in the future, I'm sure. like written information and video and audio material, games will be looked upon in centuries, especially when describing such an important event like Ukrainian war stories does. As witnesses and chroniclers of the war, do you think of preserving your game for the future with special compatibility modes or plain text backups of your work? Of course, well, we didn't really look that far into the future yet, but we have the understanding that the project will be preserved in some form, and of course we have the database with the texts, so we will see if we could upload it to some other places where it can be, you know, stored for like long term. But I guess at least for the next 10 years even Steam platform is like good enough, but we will think about you know, putting it on different platforms and making it accessible. Maybe we'll talk to some museums or something. That's a good suggestion, I think, so thanks for that. Next question. Some educational games like Attend 1942 have implemented an encyclopedia for the real background of the events described in the game. Were games like this inspiring you in your work on Ukraine war stories? Well, to be honest, we haven't really studied other games like in this particular aspect. I would say that, but of course many games have some sort of lore encyclopedias and something, so yeah, we know about that. And basically when we were working on Ukraine war stories, it was really important to us that everyone understands that these events are real, even though like characters have different names and they are basically compilations of several stories usually, but still all of those stories are real and all key events happened. So it was really important to us to have solid proofs so that we are not making some war themed fiction, you know, but rather like retelling what's actually have been happening in Ukraine over the last months. So yeah, it was really important for us to achieve that goal, and so we decided to make those like sources section. And yeah, so but we didn't look for any references for that, I think. Next question. How does the war influence your daily work? Well, I can say that it influences it differently at different stages of the war. So when the war just started, of course, it's totally disrupted our working processes, and everyone were tasked with keeping themselves and their families safe. You know, like making some food stocks and you know, looking for the nearest bomb shelters and, you know, hiding there during the air alerts. So the first week in Kiev and probably across most of the country were really chaotic, hectic, one could say. I cannot say that there was like total like chaos and confusion. It was still quite organized, but there were a lot of elements of chaos, like many people leaving, huge queues to leave the city, you know, overloaded like railroad station, overcrowded and everything like that. So yeah, some people decided to stay in Kiev, some people decided it's better to leave for a time being. So yeah, it was really stressful for everyone. So we would mostly, you know, wait out the air alerts, call each other and double check if everyone are fine. Look for, go buy some food. And it sounds really easy, but when it's first days of the war and you hear all this news pouring in, and then you go to the nearest shop, and basically there is an alert, and you think whether you should go back or disregard it and go to the shop anyways, because those alerts are very frequent. And so yeah, so the first weeks were really not productive in terms of work, but I would say 2 weeks into the war it was still very tense. There were Russian troops just outside of Kiev, and the whole city was in sort of lockdown with checkpoints and with curfew, and with limited with some restrictions to movement. So everyone were mostly sitting at home, and we're waiting to see what will happen next. Yeah, but still, people gradually started working, maybe not full time, of course, but as much time as they could. Our first task was 1 week into the war, to pay salaries to everyone, etc. Make sure that we know what's happening with everybody and stuff like that. But then people started working, mostly people who were in Kiev, because people who left the city often, had some internet connection problems or didn't have powerful PC where they were and stuff like that. But people who stayed at home, in the first 6 months, I think we didn't have any blackouts or internet problems significant problems in Kiev. So it was basically you could work from home normally. The only problem was for people who wanted to take their PC from the office, so it was problematic to reach the office, and it was the whole sort of some sort of secret missions with special agents required to get there, take your PC and get back home, but we've managed to do that, and I've talked about it in more detail in my talk Gamedev Under Bombs. You can find it on YouTube. We can leave a link in the description, so I don't want to go into that much detail right now, but basically what I can say is the first few weeks were really hectic, but then people started coming back to working from home again. And I would say once after the war started, Russian troops were forced to start a withdrawal under the attacks of Ukrainian army, and basically early April the Kiev area was liberated, and so it became much safer in Kiev. We stopped hearing daily artillery barrages for the whole day straight, and so yeah, it's become more quiet and peaceful after that. And in the June 1st, I think we've moved back to office and started working from office again. So now it's more back to normal, but of course there are still occasional air alerts, and so the Kiev is situated on the 2 river banks, and our office is on the right bank, and and some people from our team live on the left bank, so they have to cross. Usually they use subway for that, and when there is an alert, the subway doesn't cross the bridge from between the river banks, so you cannot reach office or go back home in the evening if there is an error alert, so you have to wait until the alert ends. Right now it doesn't happen really frequently, but people got caught up in it a number of times, and sometimes those error alerts could last for several hours, so that's very, you know, not great when you want to come back home and you have to wait for a couple of extra hours, but that doesn't happen too often, thankfully. Also, yeah, of course we are still like tracking all the news and everything, but you know, having some work to concentrate on is great for, you know, switching your attention to something else and sort of, you know, makes your life a little bit less stressful actually. So I think it's good for mental health long term. And yeah, of course war influences our work, but not so much anymore, I would say. Next question. Is the game a way to handle your emotions about the war, to express your feelings? That is true. I think the idea to make Ukraine war stories was heavily influenced by the events in Bucha when they became public in spring, and then it sort of transformed into this informational, more like positive goal rather than, you know, emotional outburst. But the initial push was there, and right now we are very careful to present it in a very like objective and unbiased manner. Of course we are biased, but we try to put that aside and to present all the information accurately. But of course we feel like, you know, by doing this project we're sort of, you know, making a tribute to people who face these challenges, and you know, so that people across the world could learn about it and show compassion to them. And for us it's of course a very special project to work on. So yes. Okay, moving on to the next question. Okay, so there are two people asking the same question. One is in Russian, one is in English. So I will read the Russian one, and well, I think we should combine them. So first, why don't you make it available in Russia? Steam page says that the product is not available in Russian Federation. And second question is in Russian. I will translate it for you. Why the game is unavailable in Russia? If that's done on purpose, then such restriction in Russia is counterproductive for the goals of the project. We want to make these events public and stop the war as soon as possible. I will wait for the game to become available in Russia and will share it with all of the people in Russia I know. Regardless of the results of my request, thank you very much for your work, good luck and peaceful skies. Well, thank you guys for the questions and for your good wishes. We know that there are still some people in Russia who you know, understand what's going on and who do not support the invasion. Initially we didn't want, well, basically we didn't want to make any restrictions for the game in Russia, and we purposefully did Russian localization, so that people, not only in Russia, there are people in numerous countries who speak Russian and who would have easier time reading in Russian. So There are like many countries with like Russian-speaking minorities, etc. So we wanted them to also be able to, get this information and, have access to valid and accurate source of information about the events in Ukraine. So we didn't want to restrict the game in Russia. However, and I agree that that's counterproductive to the idea on the project, that's true, and we totally agree with that. However, problem is that when we were going through review process on Steam, basically it was pointed out to us that the game will have to be restricted for the Russia region on Steam because it supposedly breaks the Russian law. I don't know the specifics, I didn't actually ask for that, but I could imagine it breaking some Russian law. So yeah, so basically it was restricted by Steam during the review, based on it like being against the Russian law. So people with Russia region on Steam cannot access the store page. However, I think there are some means to overcome that limitation, probably. I don't know for sure. So if you are from Russia and you really want to access the project, I think there should be ways around that. So if you really want to help us and spread the information about the project and send it to people etc., I think it's still doable, but probably more problematic for you now. But you should know that it wasn't our intention, and we actually encourage people in Russia or Russian speaking people in other countries to also check out this project and learn all the events that are happening. So this is most welcome, and yeah. Next question. How has the project evolved as the situation in Ukraine changes? So we've agreed at the very beginning what would be the scope and like size and scope and what would be the project about in spring, and we state everywhere that we tell you about the events of the first months, like basically first weeks even of the war. It's usually first 2-3 weeks for all 3 stories, and we don't really follow all the events because some of them are still unfinished even now. For example, the situation in Mariupol, it was very unclear for a long time, and it's still sort of unfinished. So we would want to make some larger project probably that would cover more events and more details and more everything, but we have to the key thing is that we wanted the game come out fast, and so we didn't want to making it for years. We wanted to release it as soon as possible, but with proper like promotion so that some people would learn about it and play it. We are not making it for our 2 friends, but we want more people to find out about the game and check it out. So we've agreed that the best compromise would be releasing the game in October, right after Steam Festival. So that's basically the soonest possible realistic date where we could make localization to 11 languages, and promote the game a bit, so that it's more successful on Steam, etc. We are still worried about how successful the release would be, but we are dead set for release in October, and we hope that people would support us and the game would gain some visibility on Steam, despite it being like a relatively small budget, small project. So yeah, and so we didn't really have much room for the project to evolve as the situation in Ukraine changes. We had to follow with the initial plan to make it possible to release everything in October. So basically right now we already have first two stories localized in many languages, and we are making some finishing touches on the Mariupol story, and we also need some time for the localization teams to translate it to all the other languages. So basically we write those stories in English, and then we make localizations to other languages, including Ukrainian and Russian. So and basically it's if we want the project to evolve, that would require much longer production time, and that would mean no release in 2022. So yeah, we cannot really afford that, but we have some ideas maybe for future projects, although nothing is confirmed and decided on for now, so I cannot go into too much detail. But I think that if this project, so we will think about it after release probably, or after the war ends, I don't know. So I think this project is like a limited scope project, and even for a limited scope project is like well over 40,000 words, so it's already significant size for localizations, and we cannot produce something much bigger in this short amount of time. But I can say that it's totally possible that we could make a larger project later on, maybe after the war ends or after we finish this one, but we don't have any announcements for that yet. So that's just one of the possibilities that I see right now, and we will see how that goes. Okay, next question. Your previous games were strategy games. Now you release Ukraine War Stories. The game is described as visual novel, choose your own adventure RPG. The demo shows excellent storytelling and plays as if you already made visual novels in the past. What are your experiences in visual novels and in storytelling? Well, it's true that we did only strategy games before. However, our strategy games were heavily focused on the narrative, so our one of the key features was bringing more narrative into turn-based strategies genre. So we've sort of polished our narration skills while working on those strategy games, because each of our strategy titles had over an hour of cinematics, which required cinematic script, motion capture, voiceover, and so on. Plus we had even more narrative in the actual missions. So first you would see the cinematic, then you would play the mission, hearing the conversations between general high command, political figures, Stalin, Churchill, etc. And you would see all of that in game, and we had really lots of texts and narrative in each title. So working on those games we had already high level of narrative and had a polished approach for that. And that is why starting to work on the new genre for us, which is visual novel, we've already had a solid background in narrative, and we just had to adapt to this new genre, and this is something that we wanted to explore, and of course we had to make some adjustments and use new approach to the narrative, but we already had a team that was up to the tasks, and we've already studied and discussed such possibility before, so we were sort of ready to work on visual novel as well. So that's why it probably seemed like we already had some experience with that. And it's totally possible that we could do some more visual novel projects in future. So yeah, so that's probably why you thought that we had some previous experiences. So to some large degree you are correct, because even though when you look at it in the store, those seem like completely different genre, but if you play our games you'll see that it really has lots of narrative, although it's presented a little bit differently in strategy games when compared to visual novels, but you still have to have your own working pipeline for the narrative, and we already had that, so we just had to adjust to the visual novel genre. Okay, so I think these are all questions that we've got for now. We'll probably have another Q&A after the release of the game in October or early November, so stay tuned. Also, if you don't want to miss any crucial information about the project and everything, hit the subscribe to our email newsletter button. It's in the bottom right corner. It will be it's in the bottom right corner of the project and of the main menu basically. And yeah, support the project, support Ukraine. Also, one more thing that I want to tell you is that why it's really important to wishlist the game and maybe tell people about it. It's because the more wishlists the game has, the more visibility it will get on Steam closer to release. So it's really important to first grow the number of wishlists, and we want those wishlists not to be just the number, but to be real people who've heard about the project and are genuinely interested. So if you can spread it to the people that would be great. All share it with them, and it's interesting what they think about the game and so on. Also, we encourage you to communicate with us on Steam Community Hub at any time. We are always answering your questions and requests, etc. And of course, during the release, the more people play the game, it's a free game, so we are not getting any revenue, and Steam doesn't get any revenue. But you can the more people will be playing, it will show some activity to the Steam algorithms, and they will present the game to more people. So the more people will play it at release, the more people will learn about this game overall. So that is why that is very important to promote it as much before the release. Yeah, so we hope that our efforts will reach its goal, and we would be able to reach out to a number of people across the world. And it was really great when different people from across the world reached out to us and suggested making languages that we didn't plan initially. We've got Japanese, traditional Chinese this way, so you know, the number, and we've actually then also found people who help us with Finnish language localization. So the number of languages is growing, and if we initially planned to have 8 languages for sure, right now it's 11 and it could grow yet. So that's really inspiring, and it shows, you know, worldwide support to our team in particular and to Ukrainian effort in general. So that is really encouraging, and we are very thankful to everyone who supported the project and who keeps supporting us. So thank you all very much. Have a good day and goodbye.